Over the past decade or two, you've heard many, many times, this is the most important election of our time. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on November 3rd, 2020, it is the most important election of our time. And with me is Trevor Loudon, world-renowned expert on a whole variety of political and cultural subjects. Trevor, welcome to the show.
It's great to be on. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Hey, look, you and I and some others, we'll get into it, are in a conference, September 21, 2019 in Sarasota, Florida, America the Truth Conference, designed to provide some clarity for American patriots to vote intelligently next November. What are you going to be doing at that conference?
Well, I'm going to be talking about one of our big problems. Partly that's the Marxist infiltration of the churches, but I'm also going to be talking about the vital urgency of the 2020 election. And we're going to be right near the I-4 corridor, the most critical part of the most critical state in the Union. So the fate of Western civilization depends on the I-4 corridor, and we're going to be right up against it. And I'm going to make it very, very clear that if we lose the next election, well, Donald Trump Jr. said recently, he said the 2020 election will be communism versus freedom. And he was not exaggerating in the slightest. We lose the next election, we're headlong into socialism, then communism. If we win, we can start a virtuous cycle towards freedom. It's that critical.
Yeah, and you and I know, and many of our viewers know, that the candidates on the left, the Democrats, are doctrinaire Marxists, as much as they put a veneer around it or it's some sort of social justice appendage. These people want a dictatorial regime that they're running, complete control of people, redistribution of money, and it could happen. Trevor, how do we wake Americans up, particularly at this conference in September?
Well, I think what has to be made very clear is, see, we have a Republican Party that doesn't really fly the flag of freedom that much. President Trump has done so, but many of the people around him are unwilling to do so. So most Americans really don't, and then they look at the Democrats, and they don't understand that the Democrats are Marxists now. So they sort of look at, okay, Democrats on one side, Republicans on the other, ain't a heck of a lot of difference. It doesn't really matter. But if they understood that the Democrats of they're not the Democrats of Harry Truman or JFK any longer. These are the Marxist Democrats who took over the party in the 90s and have consolidated their control. And I'm not just talking about the squad, Ocasio-Cortez and her friends. You've got at least 100 members of the House and 20 members of the US Senate on the Democrat side who are so enmeshed in Muslim Brotherhood fronts, communist fronts, Marxist organizations, or allied to Cuba, Iran, or China, they couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus. But there are no background checks in Congress or the Senate, and there's no decent media scrutiny of these people, so they get away with it. So we need to draw a very clear contrast. On one side, we have freedom and the potential for freedom. On the other side, we have a potential for complete tyranny, and that is only one bad election away. We need to get people to understand the urgency of the situation.
Along with that, Trevor, when we are at this conference, and ladies and gentlemen, America the Truth Conference is being held September 21st, 2019 in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. Trevor is one of the featured speakers, as is John Michael Chambers, as is Dr. Kirk Elliott, as is Pastor Umar Malinde from Uganda, who was attacked by Muslims some years ago, and I will be there speaking also. So you got some pretty heavy firepower communicating on this issue. But Trevor, we also have, in the state of Florida alone, we got 6 or 7 million people who identify as Bible-believing Christians who do not vote or vote occasionally. How do we awaken that group of people to save Florida because the presidency goes through the state of Florida. How do we do that?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. And I was very pleased to see a lot of evangelicals came out for Trump in the last election, but they didn't come out in big numbers in the midterms, and we lost 40 seats as a result. You know, the House lost 40 seats. Now we've got a huge job to try and retake the House to give President Trump the ability to push legislation through. So, look, it's there are 1.4 million felons who are going to have the right to vote in the next election in Florida. Trump won the last election by less than 200,000 votes. That's 1.4 million felons. That was engineered by the same communists who were backing Andrew Gillum, who raised the Democrat vote by 40% over the previous election. So we have to get amongst our evangelical base like crazy. We have to do voter registration. We have to do tours around churches, speaking tours, because they are the only thing standing between us and losing the next election. That's the only significant base out there that hasn't really been tapped for our side. The Democrats are trying to raise 40 million new voters against Trump in the next election. Well, we have to energize our evangelical Christian base to come anywhere near what the Democrats are doing in terms of voter registration, get out the vote, etc. People need to understand this is not going to be about the economy or Trump's popularity. This is going to be about who gets their base out, who is best organized. And the Democrats are far and away more organized than the Republicans, who haven't really done serious voter registration for at least 4 election cycles now.
All right, well, Trevor, look, I don't think in my lifetime, and I've been involved in a lot of elections, I have seen such a virulent, a vicious, hateful attack against one human being ever that has been launched against President Trump.
Not even close.
Not even close. And look, the guy has failures and flaws and foibles and all kinds of issues. But how do we communicate to people that the anger that the Marxists have toward Trump is really toward us, and Donald Trump is standing between us and them, and that we need to support him? How do you get a good American Christian who doesn't like the style of President Trump to get energized and get others to vote to save their families? How do you do that?
Well, this is the thing. They don't understand what is at stake here. We have to draw the line very, very clearly and explain this is Marxism here that is on the other side. You know, the Democratic Party today is led by people who marched for the Viet Cong in the 60s, marched for the Nicaraguan Sandinistas in the 80s, have opened the borders to hundreds of thousands of invaders to increase their vote, have worked closely with the Muslim Brotherhood. They are in the grip of evil. And there's only one thing standing between us and them prevailing, and that is the victory of President Trump in the next election. And it's in those terms. It's when you're in a lifeboat, when you're drowning in the ocean, you take whatever lifeboat is offered to you. And President Trump has more than deserved re-election with the great things he's done, but he has also earned the hatred of the left because they understand that it's either them or him. If he can be defeated, they rule America forever. The first thing they'll do is legalize 22 million illegal immigrants. That's the thing that Hillary Clinton promised to do within 100 days of taking office. That is 18 or 19 million new Democratic voters just there. You know, President Trump lost the popular vote by 3 million last time. He won through the Electoral College with about 200,000 votes to spare. Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million votes. What is going to happen to America if the next Democrat president legalizes 22 million illegals and allows them to vote? How can you possibly ever beat that again?
Well, Trevor, on those sobering words, I'm going to see you on September 21st, 2019 in beautiful Sarasota. And you're going to be there, and John Michael Chambers and Kirk Elliott and Umar Melinde. We invite all Americans to come there, listen to Trevor, his analysis, his view of enemies within the church, his view of the Marxist enemies, and all the other great speakers. Trevor, thank you. I'll see you in Sarasota, and we'll see all of you on September 21st, 2019 in Sarasota at the conference America, the Truth.